Greetings, sir and sirettes, and welcome back to From the Depths with me, Lathrix, and of course, welcome back to the Lathrixian Spite, our still very much in progress battleship. So today I am planning on finishing this build once and for all. This should be the last build video for at least a short while, and we can get back to destroying the Onyx Watch. Before we start and we get into all the things that have changed, I would just like to very briefly touch on something I said last episode, to do with the turret's kinetic damage. It turns out it's correct that the firing piece does show the correct amount of kinetic damage up until a certain point, and then it simply is not correct. As you can see, the kinetic damage of this shot is 9,519, which is pretty darn high, it must be said. As you can see, lots of metal destroyed in a single hit. Whereas the actual firing piece is telling me that it's, well, much smaller, at 3,200. The bullet itself is correct, so that's just a little thing I want to say, so I do need to make sure that in the future I check the actual shot itself rather than the firing piece to tell how powerful my gun is. And with that, I can actually now shrink the barrel, as that was just kind of demonstrating that. So you may be able to tell I've done quite a few things off camera. I have now shrunk the ship to a final size, which I'm very happy with, only 9,000 blocks. It is a little bit stumpy, I will admit, but hopefully once the top has been more styled in this sort of way, it will look a little bit more like it's meant to be that size, as currently the back section is still the same size as the back section from the Pride, which of course is a pretty huge structure, rather than a much smaller, more streamlined structure, which is this area here. You may also see I have removed the turrets. The reason is I've decided to put in two stationary cannons, probably with two firing pieces each, as opposed to the turrets, because there's just no point in putting a turret in such a restrained area, particularly when I was going to limit them to not be able to fire forwards anyway. And finally, this area here will be used for two more actual turrets, which will be able to fire forwards, and that will be pretty much all the weapon systems. I have also started off testing out some missiles, and I'm very happy with these missiles, and we'll be copying them over here. They're just double fragmented warhead, quite short range missiles, good for anti-air, not much else. So the reason why I also want to do the stationary cannons as opposed to the movable turrets is space. They take up far less space because they don't need a room to themselves. Even if you are really space conscious with in-hull turrets, you still end up having a large room kind of dedicated to it. So with that, let's get going on the final build episode of The Spite. I think I'll start off with... Yeah, what I'm going to do to start off with is start to convert this area to this, because I feel like that has to be done first, so we can finally finish off the whole turret segment back here and figure out where everything is going to go. There are very few things in this game that are quite as sad as having to destroy and take apart your own ship for the sake of advancement, but today that's exactly where we are. So what I've done is I've removed most of the structure, most of the shape-giving structure of the back section here, and tried to keep as much of the inside armor and segmentation as possible. In certain areas that just wasn't possible because, well, it was all connected to the outside, but I think I did as good a job as I could have. So I am sadly removing most of the missile system, at least for now, until I'm 100% certain where the new armor is actually going to be. But yeah, I think this is very feasible, and it will make it look a lot neater once it's all placed accordingly. So we have two options really. We could, and this would make it look closer to the shape at the front, have this section here using the 2 meter long pieces like this, which of course does mean we are ending on a flat area like that, making the top section a bit more obvious, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Or what we could do is go for a bit of a sharper approach using the the larger blocks here and do something similar to that. That will give it a bit of a different shape, but will cause the back to be a little bit larger. The entire side section will be larger, which is kind of what we're trying to avoid right now. We also need to figure out how we're going to make this corner look smooth, because of course we can't have this perfect shape carry on due to the large turret section in the middle. We just can't cut in that far. So we have quite a few choices ahead of us, but I think I know what I'm going to do. Compromises have to be made from time to time, so what I've done is I've caused the top section here to be a little bit smoother, so it's a bit less obvious the whole change, and then that way I've managed to actually keep the same angles as the front section, so it should look a little bit smoother. Now of course one problem with this is that the old turret's little I don't even know what you'd call this section here. These struts are of course now floating in midair, so we will have to remove that and make it a little bit shorter, which shouldn't be too difficult. Change this for a 1 meter rather than a 2 meter, and simply move the blocks down like that. So I'm pretty happy with the fact we can probably have the same size the entire ship through. So that's nice. So I'm going to continue with that now, and hopefully re-add the missile systems and see just how far back I can actually push them, because currently they're a bit too far forwards. If we can't push them far enough back, what I'll have to do is have them facing upwards, so we have upwards facing missiles. The problem with this is that there's a good chance this turret can swing into their arc of fire, so that will need to be tested. Well, there we are. The very basic shape of the back armour is now completed, and the missiles could just about fit in there. I'm not entirely happy though with how they kind of just jut out, so there's a good chance I will make them vertical once I've finished the ship anyway, but for now they can stay there. They are a very simple missile, mostly for being agile, having the one turn element, double frag warhead, but a very limited amount of time actually airborne, so it's mostly for short range combat with a very limited AI. So now we need to start working on here. So we're going to quickly add the two turrets. This should be quite an easy and very fast process. All we're doing is adding two firing pieces to each segment attached to two very small cannon builds underneath. What they're called? Custom cannons, isn't it? Yep, custom cannon builds underneath. That way I can separate the rooms even further into two rooms for each, meaning that it'll be even more difficult to actually sink the spite. The broadsides have been added, and I am very happy with them. They're remarkably cheap. They fit into some very small boxes. You can see here, this is both of the firing pieces, and they are all nice and symmetrical, with each of them having the same loadout. They're somewhat accurate, they have good explosive and armor-piercing effects, and they shoot very, very quickly. And considering they are just broadside cannons that are there purely for the sake of, honestly for me, just because I like them, and will very rarely actually get any use, you know, I'm very happy with them. I think these will actually do something in the odd situation. Another thing I have done, which is quite a big deal but mostly hidden, is I have changed around some of the settings for the cannon, for the main turret. Not only have I messed around with the turret's limitations, I've also messed around with each individual cannon. After several tests, it can no longer fire upon its own ship under any circumstance. No matter where an enemy is, this cannon will not fire upon the ship, even when the barrels are damaged or shrunk. So hurrah for that. More of Lathrixien engineering in progress. So that's almost done. The front turret, I've done a little bit more work on its settings and its AI, so that's pretty good as well. Now we need to armor up this segment after I bring this a little bit forward, so we can simply mirror each segment, which will be a lot easier, just copy and paste, and then we will work on adding the turrets here. I'm not sure what I'm going to add yet. I am tempted to add a very weak laser weaponry, but I probably won't, because I will have a laser craft in the future, with the express purpose of, well, using lasers. Well, after a bit of trial and error, I think I finally came to a pattern I'm at least mostly happy with for the side turrets, for the broadside weaponry, and that is this tiny little, almost like it's a turret jutting out of the main piece of metal, being connected only by that segment. Now, I do have two different variations I've got in my mind, and that is having it like this, and then having this bit open, perhaps, in some form of old gun emplacement way, as if there'd actually be someone looking through there. So if we were to add glass, for instance, we could have a quick look-see. Something like that, which actually I do like quite a bit, and possibly having metal here, but I'm not sure, probably not having metal there, but something like that, or just having the full thing blocked in. Of course, having it blocked in would allow me to use a beam at the back, which would save a grand total of, well, would be a grand total of about 6 blocks per placement. So I'm not too certain about which one I'm going to go with. I think I will sacrifice the block count in this one case, because I really do like the idea of the glass being there. Let's put the metal there. It also does mean, though, that I do need to put something at the back, because at the moment you look into it, and what you will see is the pretty much hollow area behind it, which contains pretty much nothing, just the connecting pieces leading to the underground. So perhaps you'll need to change the background here, just have a piece of metal here, a piece of black metal or something, so it looks as if you're looking inside. But yeah, I am quite happy with those. So, moving on to the main turrets here. By main turrets, I mean main forward-facing turrets, not including the mega turret at the back. So, with this one, I'm thinking we're going to be stealing the Onyx Watch here. And we're still in a good block count. Stealing the Onyx Watch's ships, rather, not the entire Onyx Watch fleet. And we're going to be bringing this armor here down, rounding this off, bringing it down, and making it so it goes quickly to the bottom level here. This will stop these from being able to turn to the left, and this one being able to turn to the right, but I don't really mind too much about that, as long as I can fire directly forward with a little bit of leeway because of the motor-driven barrels on their actual barrels. And then that can kind of snake around and armour up all this section and provide a nice bit of defence for the front there, which will be housing, which is housing currently one of the 6 ammo rooms. So I'll start with that, and we'll be right back. You see in front of you Lathrix changing his mind once again. Okay, so instead of using the cannons from the Onyx Watch, we are going to be using these cannons, which are from the hull. They are very efficient for their cost, which is extremely low, and they do sport a very low block count. So we're going to be using these instead, because the Onyx Watch's cannons, although they do look fantastic, are also known for being really wasteful, and they just are. So instead we're going to be using these. Now, I'm probably unable to turn this all the way around at the moment, so what we'll probably be doing is editing the top segment here of the turret so that we can actually turn it. Although I am going to quickly check just to see if that is the case. Prepare to see a really unfinished inside of a hull. Yep, that's so empty, and this random little bit of wall in the middle there from a long time ago. Oh, of course you can't turn at all at the moment because I haven't broken the metal around you. So let's just quickly go ahead and do this. Also, my phone's gone off like 3 times in like the last minute, despite the fact I thought I put it on silent. So I don't really care right now. We're just going about this, and, well, we're making a very unclean break there just to see if it can actually work. Oh, never mind, it can do a full turn. Can it all the way? Yep, it can, so never mind then. It's absolutely fine, we can keep it as it is, which of course will save a lot of time and effort on my part. So let's put these beams back, and then we'll cut them out again, this time in the correct way, and we will continue to armour up this little lower segment here to protect the bottom of the turret. Every ship needs a door, and here is ours. Okay, so the turrets have been successfully melded with the hull. They now have their own rooms and are very secure. Trying to destroy anything except for the actual turret segment above the deck will be quite difficult. And with that in mind, the main cannon here as well has been further armoured up in this segment by removing a few really weirdly placed stuff from the old shape, and it actually has its own rooms and everything now, so that should be much easier to defend. And we are still a full 1,037 blocks away from our goal, from our maximum, of course, which is 12,500 blocks. So with all that good stuff, let's get on to some of the bad stuff. I am not happy with these turrets currently. I don't like how they're kind of jutting out from the deck. As much as this shape is quite rudimentary, I'll admit, the entire ship is quite, what's the word here? It's made of quite basic shapes, all slotted together, in my opinion, rather nicely. everything has its place, and that's kind of been the idea. Everything has been slotted in, everything is part of the ship, the metal kind of goes over each and every segment, even the turret is part of the deck, part of the hull, etc. These turrets don't look like that, they look like they have simply been placed onto a metal slab. So to fix this, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do, but I do have one idea. In a similar way to this little segment here, which isn't finished yet, which is going to be a holding kind of piece of metal. It's going to have metal going from side to side, well, pretending to hold the barrel. I'm thinking we're going to cut away at some of this metal here and go down to the very bottom of the deck again, and then go back up once it actually hits the turret. So the turret looks like it's been slowly worked upwards from the deck as opposed to simply placed on this little, again, metal plate I've produced. That's the first idea. The second idea, which isn't an idea I really want to do, is do a shape very similar to this, which I've actually fell in love with, honestly. Of course, looks are completely subjective, and I understand how basic this looks, but it's just a nice shape, in my opinion. And do that kind of shape at the front here, because that will also allow us to smooth off the front with the old piece here, with the old piece of metal here, the main body. So I'll try the first, then I'll try the second. I'll be right back once I decide which one I prefer. Once in a while, a very rare event occurs. This event is when Lathrix completely stops what he's meant to be doing and begins working on a separate project. Okay, so this isn't quite the case, but still, I have started building something completely different. So, the original Spite over there is actually finished, and by finished, I mean finished to the extent where I no longer wish to continue it on camera because it's only the most boring of stuff now. It's the essential stuff like fitting the engine again and sorting out the anti-missile systems, which is a very boring task indeed. Once that is complete, the ship over yonder is finished. Our little stumpy mega defensive ship is done. Now, because we don't have much time left of the episode, and I wanted to do this anyway, we're going to work on this, which is a version of the Spite I'm probably going to be calling the Mole, because I kind of feel like that's like a mole face, and that amuses me greatly. So the big difference between this Spite and that Spite, or this Mole and that Spite, is that of course we're not using the Mega Cannon. Now the Mega Cannon, as much as I freaking love it, actually costs over 2,000 blocks and way over 100,000 metal, and of course various other resources. This one, however, as you can probably see, is going to have a little command area here, several more smaller cannons, possibly one of the Onyx watches, but I'm still against kind of just stealing the turret outright, so we're going to make our own turrets, which are completely above hull turrets for the side, probably around about here, and then we'll have a small inner hull missile section here, or perhaps even another inside hull turret section. I'm not really too sure, but what is certain is I'm going to have somewhere to sit, which will be here, which will be lovely, and then everything will be nice and flat on the top. This way we don't have the huge massive section on the back and then the very small section there on the front, which makes it very obvious that this is essentially a retrofitted other ship. This one's going to have far more weapon systems. So I'm going to quickly carry on with this, and it should be finished by the end of this episode. If it's not, it doesn't matter. I promise this is the last building video for quite some time, or at least a dedicated building video. A glorious view of the oceans that will one day belong to the Lathrixian fleet. Okay, since that last little clip, I have been very busy. The whole bottom section of the ship has been removed, because it turns out most of it was honestly just there to hold the huge turret, the huge 9-barrel turret, which of course is not on this variation of the ship. So without that, we are pretty much free to do what we want. We have loads of blocks now, which we can use, and honestly, we have enough ammunition processors to currently keep up with every single gun when they're firing. I know, I've tested it, so that's fantastic. So the front section obviously has been removed and needs to be replaced. They will be replaced with stationary turrets, stationary cannons, so that I don't need to take up too much space underneath, as I have also pointed the ship quite a bit. So the big thing with this ship, of course, is it's lacking its old main weapon, and to make up for that, I've actually increased the power slightly of the missiles. They are 1 longer each. You can't see it because I've basically pushed them back, because there's a whole area here, which is now free. Actually, let's have a quick look-see at it. There we are, we have all this area still free, for I'm not 100% sure. Obviously the innards aren't quite finished yet. This Onyx Watch turret, which has been stolen, is currently here mostly as a placeholder. I will be changing that soon, but I was just having a look-see to see if we could fit one there. Which we can, but most likely what I'm going to do is have this section extend a little bit as it goes back, so that I may have two turrets on the side of the command tower, the bridge, so that I can actually fire 360 with a nice little sideways mounted gun, particularly since I'm going to be losing the firepower of the two front-facing guns. Well, I won't be losing the firepower, just I'll be losing their situational firepower, as they will no longer always be able to fire with the full curve. They'll only have that curve most likely to actually aim. All going well so far, especially since now it's only 9,000 blocks and just over 600,000 metal. Front guns are online, engine is installed, and we have our glorious propulsion systems online, even if they are very, very weak. So our grand total for our maximum speed is 8. 8 meters per second. That is ridiculously slow, but at least it is faster than the minimum speed on the map, which is 3, so at least it can get to places with some speed. I will possibly be adding more propulsion in the future in the form of much lower down sections. I already have a small low section there, which I'm going to be prettying up in a little while, but I could always add more in the future. So the front guns are much like the side guns, except for they are remarkably more powerful. This is what's bringing us up to a grand total of 10,000 blocks, as opposed to, I believe we're on 900. Sorry, I believe we had just hit 9,000 before, so it's quite an expensive venture, but honestly, these 4 cannons are actually very, very powerful. So we have 5 stationary cannons on the front, on the very first layer of the deck. Then we have these 2 cannons here. Of course, they're not part of a single cannon system. They are both completely independent with their own mainframe. We have 4 here, and we have 1 turret, the only movable weapon currently on the ship, which is this turret up here, which is a slightly upgraded version of the hull's regular turrets. Now, I am not sure what to use this back section for. We still have 2,000 blocks to play with, so regardless what I do, we're still going to be under the 12.5k limit. Ultimately, one thing did keep cropping up. I very well could just use the stolen weapon. I don't want to do it, but we could very simply grab this and put it there. I think it's this one I'm thinking of. Boom. There we go. Oh, that was not in the direct middle, but there we are. You get the idea. Just pretend there's only 3 barrels. We could easily have a stolen Onyx Watch gun there. There we go. Am I just There we are. Am I just incapable of putting that in the middle? There we are. Something like that. They can only shoot backwards just for laughs. Or we could try to focus on putting a weapon on the outside of this command section, able to fire forwards, up, and backwards, which is probably what I'm going to end up doing, as that can also allow us to retain this basic shape, which is all nice and easy. Now, one thing I do want to say is currently this ship is a little bit low in the water, but the reason for this is because most of the buoyancy is actually in the top section. I tried to sink it. I poked holes in its main segments, which are here and over here, which are basically 2 giant chambers because I haven't segmented it, and it just wouldn't sink. It simply gets to these guns level and then it floats on that. So until the entire ship is destroyed, it's still going to be buoyant in the water. Well, after trying out a lot of combinations, it turns out that if we were to have a sideways mounted cannon, we would need to completely rework the missile system, as it would be so dangerous and have such a high chance of obliterating the cannon. Even if we were to use safety fuses, the missiles would simply get stuck, and that can cause problems as well. So, I've made these 2 incredibly cheap cannons. They may look impressive and powerful, but actually they're pretty terrible. They're a lot worse than the Onyx Watch variant. I simply put them there because I noticed, oh look, I have spare space, why not add a weapon system? So that's a just-in-case weapon system, and to ensure that it doesn't completely obliterate our own ship, it's AI won't actually allow it to fire within the first, I think, 10 degrees here, so it can only fire at things not directly in front of it. But they're there because, well, they cost like 30 blocks and a tiny bit of metal. So I've put these two cannons down here. These are my old faithful cannons I always tend to use because they're cheap and effective. But I think I'll also have to redo those a little bit at least if I were to want to use them. But they would be very good here, as the big thing is, these cannons would be able to fire backwards, giving me some actual ability to fire at things which aren't in front or to the side. So what I think I'll be doing is cutting a small hole in the armour here, and then putting a slightly modified version of this a little bit lower. These are very similar to this cannon. This cannon's just a little bit more expensive, and as a result a little bit more powerful, along with a slightly larger actual turret segment, as in the bit above the deck. So I'll quickly go and put that in. Well, although there's still a little bit work to do, we are essentially finished in the main structure of this ship. It's better at fighting things directly in front of it, or slightly to the left or right, but it can also fire backwards with two of its weapons, and of course, most importantly, its missile system. We're going to be quickly testing out against the usual enemy, which they Marauder, as I don't really want to test it out against, wow, anything bigger until I've got all of the systems sorted. Those missiles are ridiculously agile. Well, the guns work. That's the important thing. Didn't really go in the well, it didn't really spawn in the direction I wanted it to, so let's quickly spawn in an enemy elsewhere. But yes, I won't be testing this against the Onyx Watch until I'm actually in the campaign again, as I feel that's a little bit cheesy, knowing exactly how well it's going to do. Also, I don't have the shields yet, which kind of sucks. So, Deepwater Guard team, spawn in, I don't know, let's actually find... we could just spawn in something stupid, like, I don't know, the Charnel. I'm sorry, Charnel. I am sorry. Wow. That's a lot of shells. Okay, the front guns seem to be working just fine. Oh, yep, they're definitely working. Yeah, ooh, these should be a little bit longer. Actually, that... Oh, no, it simply can't fire, can it? No, because I told it can't fire in this arc. Okay, that's fantastic. So it is listening. This one needs to be altered slightly, though. Okay, so the two small side guns, the AI isn't set up correctly. Neither is this one, because it hasn't got a fail-safe yet. Whoops. But ultimately, yeah, it seems to be able to put out quite a bit of damage. When it actually has its shielding, and I tweak around with the weapons a little bit more, I think it's going to be a fantastic addition to the Lathrixian Navy. The end block count is 10,816. 90, okay, we're currently healing. It's going to go up a little bit more than that anyway once I round off the armour and possibly add a small broadside weapon here, because I like broadside weapons, or perhaps even a small back cannon since we have this space completely free. I like it, and that's the important thing. I like the looks of it, even if it is a little bit beat up right now, mostly from its own weaponry, and I think it's going to do decently against the Onyx Watch, particularly once, again, the shields have been implemented. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this episode, then of course, likes, favourites, shares, comments, all that good stuff helps out me, helps out the channel, and most importantly, shows that From the Depths is a series you wish to see continued in the future. Next time, we're going to be getting into some battles. Thank you again, and goodbye.